Hello, my name is Robert Pittman. I'm an electrical engineer from Sacramento, and I'm licensing the electrical drafting ribbon that my firm has been using for 20 years. So let me show you an overview of what we're capable of doing. Not necessarily how to do it, that'll come later, but what it's capable of. I have here a drawing done recently in our office. Let me try to reproduce it for you here quickly. So this is the reflected ceiling plan over here on the left. I'm going to come up to our ribbon and select Fixture Layout, and I see that the designer selected this fixture to use. I click OK, and it's looking for the intersection of the T-bar, so I give it one, and now it's looking for the rotation. So I give it a rotation, and now I select anywhere inside the T-bar, and it drops it straight in. So now I come up and it copies the row. I come up again, and this fixture is not needed because the wall jogged. So I select it again and take it out. Now I just finish out the room. Like that. Press enter to get out of it. Go up to our join fixture whips command, what we call the auto join, and select the fixtures by window, and it draws the junction box and fixture whip out to the fixtures and the trunk line. Press enter again, go from row to row. Now I'm going to use the conduit command and come from this junction box up to this junction box and make that selection. I'm going to press enter again and come from that junction box over to this junction box and bend it down, and it did that. Now let's put in some fixture tags. He used type A and a default position in the upper right hand corner. Now I'm going to select fixtures by window and tag them all very quickly. Now I can put some tick marks in, press enter to do it again, and you'll see that the tick marks auto rotate to match what you're putting them on. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there and move on to the power plan. So I'm going to change my draw status to existing because it's a remodel, and put a power outlet and a telephone outlet on the wall, and then put some text to identify them as existing. Copy them over like that. I'm going to change my draw status back to new and put in a floor outlet right here, and copy that over. He used 2 rows of 4. Now I'm going to go to draw status underground and draw the conduit between the boxes. I'm going to select use command line here to avoid the box popping up. Makes it go a little bit faster. Draw home run like that. Put the home run tag text on. And copy this down. Like that. And it goes very fast. Let me show you a little bit. Before I forget, let me change my draw status back to new. Let me show you a little bit about what it did. I'm going to use our freeze by pick and pick the fixture tags. Let's say the architect called and asked for a reflected ceiling plan and a plug layout. So I froze those. I'm going to pick that, and it freezes the power distribution conduit. Now I've picked that and freeze the lighting conduit and have a lighting plan. The power distribution conduit's already been frozen over here. I press enter to enter the command again, and I freeze the new tags and the existing tags, and I have a plug layout. So just the quick little changes up here, and the ribbon was tracking layers for you. I believe you'll get 3 key benefits by using this. First is standardization among your drafters. Everybody's drawings end up looking very, very much alike automatically. Second, it'll pay for itself in increased productivity. Right now we're asking for less than $1 a day, and I believe it'll save an hour or more every day that it's used. Third, fast onboarding. During good economic times, when we have a statistical full employment, we have found it very difficult to find good drafters who can produce quickly. So what we've been able to do is bring in people who are smart and know computers, set them in front of a video like this, and by after lunch, they're producing very quickly. And that is a great benefit. I believe everybody that uses AutoCAD to produce construction documents should have this ribbon. Now, why would I say that? Because these are my standards and not your standards. The reason is because it's highly customizable. You can change what the blocks look like, you can change their names, you can change the layer names, you can change all the color schemes, text size. Everything that's going on here can be changed, altered, customized. There's an options box where the majority of that takes place. Write me. I can help you set it up for your company. If you have any troubles, you can show me a sample of your standards, and I can walk you through the changes needed to make the ribbon produce that. My email address is developer@pvrocket.com. PVRocket is my other product. It's not a drafting tool. It actually does solar photovoltaic design. And you can write me there and I will help you through it. Let me show you a sample of what I mean by the customization. So I'm going to go over here and copy these fixtures adjacent. And then I'm going to go into the layer manager and thaw some of those layers that we froze. Actually, I'll thaw all of them. Now I'm going to go into the options and change some of these values. And auto join fixture whips. Select these fixtures by window. Now look what I was able to do very quickly. See, the original here on the left was very wavy back and forth. If that's not your standard, change it. This is just one arc in and highly customizable. So let's get started on how to use the program. So let's try to be systematic about it. Over here on the left is, you saw me use draw status, and it's used to control basically the layer, is it existing or new. So if I change this to existing, everything comes in under the requirements of the existing. Ours is green, and there's some other variables that are set. So if I draw this and then get the new plan, and some of these should be demolished, I don't have to redraw it. I can come in here and set the draw status to demo, and that's great, but I can also pick the demo again, and because it was already set to demo, I get a pick box that I can select things individually or by window, and then when I press enter, they go to the demolition standards, the demolition layer, hidden, and things like that. The text stayed green because the text standard is green. So that's first on the demo, on the draw status. Next is set scale. So right now we have it set, it works just like dim scale. We have it set to 96 for 1/8 inch equals a foot. So if I wanted to change it to quarter scale, I would type in 48, or I could even do 4 feet like that and press accept. And if I pick something, it floats in, but then after I pick the spot, it scales appropriately. I'd also like to point out that if I was on paper space, I'm switching sheets here. Let me switch to an actual sheet there. That it comes in very large, but once you pick the spot, oops, you can hardly see that because it was set to demo in yellow on a white. But once you pick it, it scales appropriately because it knows the difference between paper space and model space, and that includes everything across the board. The text command, well, we use this dynamic text over here you saw me use, and it puts it on the text layer and so forth. It also scales automatically between model space and paper space. And that's about it for that. So let's go into the block library. Now the block library, all these blocks, I'm not going to go into each one and show you that. Let me just say for now, I'll go over it during the customization part of this video. Let me just say for now that all the blocks reference the same programming subroutine, and they get different behavior based on a set of variable flags that are set. So let me show you an example. If I pick a floor outlet, all it did was ask for a space, and it wasn't looking for nearest endpoint or intersection or anything. It just was looking for a spot. I gave it, and then it didn't ask for rotation or anything. But if I use this junction box, or box with 2 letters in it, now it's looking for a rotation. And if I give it something like that, it rotated the letters. You would think that it would say the O would be over here and the S would be over here because I picked and rotated it that way. But there's a variable flag that says rotate the attribute with a preference toward down or to the right. It will never allow it to be printed with the letters to the left or up. And so that comes in handy when you put things on a wall like this right here. You can rotate it with the wall and it still says OS and not OS upside down. That's our occupancy sensor here at the company. So there's things like that. There's also this, for instance, here's a flag that floats in that's meant to be on paper space, so it floats in very small, but once I pick, it goes to model space scale, and if I give it a rotation, that variable rotated, and it was forced to 0. And so there's an example of everything working together. Layers are controlled, blocks are controlled, and you can set there's an options box that sets all of these variable flags so that you can get the behavior that you want. And let's move on. So the first commands that we come to are these flex commands. There's 3. There's a simple arc, then there's this wavy arc like that, and then there's a factory whip between, it was originally meant to be between a master satellite fixture pair, and it comes in with an F in the middle of it. So those are the first 3. Let me show you the arc a little bit. So if you are somebody who uses arcs between your outlets, and let me change my scale back to 1/8 inch, then you could pick near the outlets like that, and if you don't want it to go into the wall like that, what you do, you see here on the command line, it says select the next point, circle, flip, or stretch. If I type in F for flip, it flips it around to the other side, and then I can go on, and it trimmed it after the flip. So I could also say S for stretch, and it gives me a grip point, and I can stretch it to anywhere, and then after I press enter, it trims it afterwards, so it's always pointed toward the center. Now I have my pick box set to 6. Let me take it down and show you an example of a failure, just so you're aware of it. I'm going to use that same command and come in pretty tight and pick there, and it snapped to the midpoint of that line, and then I'm going to go up there, and you see that it didn't trim it to the circle. So when you use these, it says pick near the circle, and part of that you can control that by being zoomed out a little bit further, and then part of it you can control it with a good pick box size. I've been experimenting since I've been making these videos, and I recommend 6. My other product, PV Rocket, I recommend 4, because when you're dragging the DC string through a field of modules, you don't want to accidentally get the row above or below, and 4 seems to give you that good control. But here for this ribbon, 6 seems to do a better job. And you don't need to be zoomed in that far anyway. Let me show you an example. I'm going to put this downlight symbol, I'm going to put 4 of them out here. See that there's 2 concentric circles inside a box. Let's say I want the circuit drawn to the outside circle. Okay? I'm going to use that arc and go from here to there. I'm going to flip it so that it gets kind of wavy. We like waves here. And press enter. Now, watching that, you would say I had to have missed the outer circle. There's no way I could have gotten that circle. But it's not true. I did hit the outer circle, and I'll show you later during customization how I did that. So we work pretty zoomed out. It helps you actually to visualize what you're drafting, and it goes very fast that way. You're not zoomed in very, very tight. Next, let me show you the leaders. It's kind of a minor point, but we do have the ability to put in an arrow, and then if you're tagging a conduit or something, you can pull down a loop leader like that, something like that. So with that being said, let me show you the conduit command, and this will be one of the longer explanations of the video. So I start that, and at the command line it says pick edge of circle. So I pick the edge of the circle at the outlet, and you see there's a little overlap between the conduit and the telephone outlet. So you should want to bend that down. So if I see how these selections up, down, straight down are available, but the rest are grayed out because there's left and right doesn't make any sense for something that's horizontal. So let me bend this down with the selection, and you see it bent it down at 45-degree angles. Let me go ahead and get rid of that text so it's not in our way. You would simply move it after drafting. So let me just redo that again. And bend that down. Now the next most important part is to know about the offsets. So when I bent that down, it came down 20 inches, which is a good appearance at 1/8 scale. You can change that by typing in something else. Like let's say we want 30 inches. So I'm going to take the down off and take it back to straight, and then put it back on, and you see it bent it down further. You can also do a by pick, and if you want to make it very tight like that, and now I take it off and put it back on, and it bends it to that distance. And if I want to reset it, I just take the default off and then put it back on, and it's 20 inches. Taking the default off means that it's going to ask you how far do you want to bend the curve. So if I hit next point on this and come over here, and then I tell it down, it didn't bend it down. It's asking me at the command line, it says select distance to draw a curve. So I'm going to pick on the screen and get it. So that gives you the ability to do a different offset every single time. Now let me turn the default offset back on and go next point and come down here to the next receptacle. Now instead of having up and down, we have left and right because as an option, because the program determined that this segment is mostly vertical. So if I say right, it looks like that. Now up here we have high corner and low corner. If I pick low corner, it draws it down here. If I pick high corner, it draws it to up there. Now notice that all the selections are available now. Up, down, left, and right. So the up, down became available because now we have a horizontal segment there. And if I pick down on that, it bent that segment. And if I pick left on the other segment, it bent it like that. And very quickly, we get perfectly done shapes and conduit that can be kept at right angles to the building. These are perfectly at 45 degrees. They're perfectly in line with each other, all very quick. You can also switch to arc at this point, and you can flip the arc just like the other command I was showing you, and you can stretch the arc and you can convert it back to a line, and you can tell it to do it in low voltage. So let me hit high corner and low voltage and click OK, and that's our symbol for low voltage. It's red, which gets printed differently, and it's much tighter wave back and forth than the fixture whip wave. One last thing. Let's say we go from this outlet to this outlet and go high corner. There's a multiple corner here that is an option. And whether it's left or horizontal or vertical depends on the order of how you were picking things. So you have to remember which direction you went, previous and last. So if I bend the previous point right, this is where I started from, apparently, up here in the upper left-hand corner. And see, there's this segment, and they're both available for right and left. So that's why they're separated by previous point and last point. So if I go straight left here, and by the way, I don't think I mentioned that before. So left bends it at a 45 degree out, straight left bends it straight, horizontal, and then bends it around. And then you can also, and so that gives you some good different shapes, and you can also hit low voltage on that and click OK. Now, most of the time, my drafters and we're not actually using this dialog box. There's a use command line here, and it brings up the command line with all the options that you have. And we can bend this down and then go straight on to the next device and bend that down. And we don't actually use our mouse like I just did and select on that. We type DO for down, and then come over here and go high corner and DO for down, LE for left, pick the next one, LE for left, and we're done. So there we go. Now let's get to the next command, Fixture Layout. So I'm going to erase all of these and start over again. And I think you kind of got the gist. You pick these fixtures, and I'll leave it to you to understand what the different blocks look like. And remember that you can rename the blocks and change the appearance of the blocks and everything. And I showed you in the overview portion how to do a by row. Let me just show you real quick again. I'm going to pick the intersection, I'm going to give it a rotation, and now it knows where the T-bar is, and I can pick anywhere inside the T-bar and it puts it in. I can pick again and it takes it out. I come up and it copies it by row. I come up and see how the wall intersected. I take it out. Let's say there's a column right here and I don't want the next row to have that fixture, so you take it out and then you can put it back in. I did that wrong, but you see the point. So I press enter to get out. Let me do that again and switch to 2 by 2 just to show you, and switch from by row to multiple. So by row means I established a row and then as I went up it copied that row. Let's look at what multiple does. So same thing, I'm going to give it the intersection, give it a rotation, and now I'm selecting, but as I come up you notice it didn't copy it by row, it just is multiple. So you can do different patterns. We used to do checkerboard patterns 20 years ago. I don't think we've done it in a long time, but something like that. And if you want to take one out, you just select it again and then put it back in somewhere else, and it's pretty quick. I'm seeing a draw order issue here. Let me do a regen and see if that resolves it. No, it didn't. Draw, select the floor plan. There, that fixed it. I don't know why that happened. And that's it for that. Now the next part is called quarter pointing. So down here I have a diagram of what I mean by that. I used to call it 4 pointing, but my staff keeps telling me I'm wrong about that, and the rest of the world calls it quarter pointing. So when you lay out a room with downlights or maybe 1x4 wraps or something like that, we very typically will do a certain distance off the wall in the X direction, and then the distance between the fixtures is 2 times that distance, and then those are equal all the way across, and then on the far side you get the same distance off again, and you do it in both directions, the X and Y. So we have a command here. Let me use this room over here for it, and I believe, yeah, I do. Go to Fixture Layout, and it's down here. I'm going to pick quarter point and all these go away, and these commands up here, if these blocks aren't in the drawing, it'll insert them. But for the quarter point command, it works a little bit differently, and it'll read whatever drawing block you have in the drawing. So make sure you have the block that you want and pick it down here. So I'm going to pick the downlight and click OK and come up here, and I believe that's the corner of our room right there. And then come over here, and my snap got turned off by the program. I'm going to press F3 to turn it back on, and I get this layout perfectly quarter pointed. Now if you look at this box, there's a lot of information in here. It's telling me that the rows are 7 feet 9 inches on center, and the columns are 8 feet on center. And it tells me the area of the room. If I tell it that the default is 3000 lumens per fixture, I can type in here and change it to 3600 for instance and press enter, and this foot candle gets calculated for the room. And if the default for watts per fixture is 34, if I type in what it is and press enter, the watts per square foot is calculated. Our staff likes to keep a track on that because in California with the energy code, if you're below a certain watts per square foot, it saves on controls and saves our customers money. So if I hit more, it will put in more rows or more columns and respace everything appropriately. On the fly, very quickly, always recalculating the foot candles and the watts per square foot. Now scale and rotate. So let me hit close on that and change our scale to quarter. A quarter inch equals a foot. And erase those fixtures, and let's do a different fixture, a 1x4. I'm not sure I have a 1x4 in here. Let me cancel that and pull down a surface wrap, 1x4. Now, same kind of an outcome for this. Let's talk about scale and rotation. We wouldn't want to scale this one because it's 1x4. If we scale it, then it's drawn to scale, so we don't want to do that. But on the downlight, we would have wanted to, or might have wanted to. So if you press the scale on this, it'll scale it appropriately for what you selected. So right now we're set to 1/4 inch equals a foot, and it scaled it down. If I want to scale it back up, I just press it again. Now the rotation is why I switched fixtures. If you want to rotate these, you press that and it rotates them. You press it again, it rotates them back 90 degrees always. So that gives you some good flexibility there. And I'm going to hit close on that. Now let's talk about quarter pointing a hallway, a corridor. So I'm going to switch back to a downlight like this and pick from that corner to here, and quarter pointed the hallway perfectly. And I can hit, actually I can show you, I can hit scale on this now, and I can remove some fixtures, and it shows me that I'm 9 feet 8 inches on center. That's 11.7. That looks a little bit too far apart. I'm going to go back to 9.8, and there you have it. So I click OK. Now look at this fixture here, how it's placed. It's perfectly quarter pointed. This distance is half of the distance between the fixtures. But a lot of people would argue that it's misplaced because you should be looking down this hallway at a centered fixture, and it's not centered. So we could still handle that and use our quarter point command. Let me erase these and pull this down and insert a recessed fixture, and I'm going to type in M2P for midpoint of 2 points and turn my snaps back on like that, and it dropped it in and scaled it. I'm going to do the same thing down here because it could be argued that this one should be in the center also. I'm going to go back to Fixture Layout. We're still on quarter point, we're still on downlight, and click OK. Instead of going to the wall, I'm going to go to these two fixtures like that, and it quarter pointed them so that they're the equal distance apart all the way down. I'm going to hit the scale button so that they scale the same as the other two, and if I hit scale again, it scales all of them up, including the anchors. That's what we call those two fixtures, anchor points. So if I hit less on this, you see how everything is spaced equally with those two anchor fixtures solidifying the endpoints instead of using the distance off the wall. So really handy tool there. This is one of our most recent commands. Beta testers and people who have worked for us in the past will recognize that this is pretty new. And I hit close and time to move on. So next is the auto join command. I'm going to put some fixtures back in. Like that. So let me come up here in the middle, in the top, and actually let me move these over 4 feet because I want to show you something. So I hit the join fixture whips, and the first option that I have is to be able to select the fixtures themselves, and it draws in the junction box and the whips. I'm going to erase those, and I'm going to reset the scale to 1/8 inch equals a foot. You can select this and have it draw in for you. So there was one option. Here's another option. I'm going to undo that, pick it again, and you see it drew it the other way. So it put the junction box in and flexed up and vertically, and then the trunk cable was drawn horizontally. So how do you control that? Well, you might have spotted it already. Let me type in and create rectangles here to help you see where I'm picking. Now, see that there's a long length of the rectangle and a short length. The conduit between the junction boxes will follow the long path of those rectangles. So if I do it now and pick out here by this and over there, you see that the conduit followed the long length. If I do an undo, by the way, the first undo takes the conduit away, the second undo undoes the rest of it. So if I pick it again and come out here like this, it drew it the other way, and now you see how I control that. So let me take these away and move the fixtures back. And if I do an auto join and select by window, it goes on as long as you want to do it. I'm going to do undo, and then join fixture whips and come out to pick all 4. Now can you guess what's going to happen here? It assumes that you're using master satellite pairs, and it put the junction box in the middle, put the master next to it, and then did a factory fixture whip, that's what the F stands for, out to the others. Now I have people telling me that I should take this feature out, but remember, or maybe you are aware or maybe you're not, but I believe that we're coming back around toward master satellite pairs because they're talking about in LED power over Ethernet cabling. So where that driver goes is still up for debate from one person to the next, but imagine the driver that powers multiple fixtures being in one of the fixtures and then going low voltage out to the others, and this configuration might still work. And there's an option to take that F out so that it looks just like this, and again, it doesn't have to be wavy like this. Now let's say you wanted to whip all four of these fixtures together as independents with a junction box in the center. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. First, let me pick these two fixtures, and it put a junction box in the center, and you might have guessed that. So now what do you do with the other one? You can pick the first, and you can pick the junction box that you want to connect it to, and you can pick the next one, and it did it, and there's only one junction box there. So that's one way, and that's probably the fastest way, but there are other ways of doing it. I can go to the block library and pick a junction box and put it anywhere I want, and then go to auto join and do that, and it'll connect them. So that's one way. Let me do undo, 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 and let me do the last way that I can think of. So I picked join fixture whips, and let's say I want a junction box in the center of this T-bar. I don't know why I would want to do that, but let's say I do. Instead of picking a fixture or an out or a junction box or anything, I can pick the intersection of the T-bar, and that puts it into a different input mode. And so now it's expecting another intersection, and so I picked that one over there, and now we're ready to go. So it knows that I want a junction box right here. And now I can select a fixture and it'll draw it. And I realized in the middle of that I should have picked a fixture first. So let me start the command, pick a fixture, pick the intersection, pick the intersection, pick the next one, and it drew the box in there and then connected the two fixtures. And now I can go fixture, box, fixture, and it connects them up. And that's about it for join fixture whips. So next is the fixture type command that you saw me use earlier. There's fixture type and switch subscripts here available. And fixture type has a default location, which in the overview video I already picked in the upper right hand corner. Then there's a default that I've set to A, and then there's an alternate that I can set right now to AE. Let me select fixtures and pick these by window and press enter. And it put all of the tags in. Now let me go to the alternate and say that some of these are going to be emergency fixtures. And I want to do some kind of a pattern like this. Seems like a little bit too many, but now I've got A's and AE's. Let me show you the count fixtures. So if I press count, it did a count up for us on that. I have 17 A's and 11 AE's. Now a word of caution on what I just did there. Don't copy, it's not a big deal if you do, but don't copy these tags and turn them into a note like that. Because if I start the command again, fixture type, and go into count, I have that note as a counted item in my list. Absolutely not a big deal. It'll count all the text that you want to create, but it's annoying if you start to rely on this to count your fixtures, and then there's random text in there that got counted also. So these tags get counted. Text started from the dynamic text do not. So there's a difference between the two texts, and that's how that works. The switch subscripts, let's go ABA for one and CDC for the next. And I select fixtures, and pick the end, and this is not by window. If you click out here and miss everything, it doesn't do anything for you. So it's not by window. You come and pick, and obviously this is back to what I did there is kind of back to the days of fluorescent, but my staff still uses this. They'll just put in one letter, A or B, and then pick on the end or in the middle point over here, and it'll drop the A or B to denote that that fixture is switched by switch A or switch B. And you can very quickly go back and forth between the different switching schemes, and that's why there's two, and not asking you to type in ABA and CDC to switch back and forth, and that's why those are there. And then the last thing to mention is after you do your conduits and everything, if the fixture tags have an overlap with a conduit, the best thing to do is to move the fixture tag, right? So there's a move fixture type here that moves it away from the default position for just one fixture at a time. So if I hit that button, I can come in here and have, with great precision and uniformity, and that's kind of a part of the key of this, is how quickly, the counting is one thing, but also how quickly and uniform and perfectly placed all the fixture tags on a building are. And I can also pick in the midpoint of that direction. I don't think there is a midpoint on the short direction, so it's just the long one. And then lastly, I can pick the circle in here, and it puts it in the middle of the block. And that's about it for Fixture Type Manager. Next up is Home Run, and I've kind of already shown you that a little bit. Well, not really. I didn't really talk about it. So there was this kind of home run that is a line and a hook with an arrow on it. That only happens because it was set to underground when I drew that. There used to be a reason for having the underground drawn like that. I'm pretty sure it's obsolete now, but we leave that in there. So now that I'm set draw status new or existing or demo, the home run looks like this. So I click on it, and it wants to be by the outlet, and it snaps there. And then you draw, well, the way we do it is we draw out and then a little bit further out and then back toward the panel. Let's say the panel's over here. And this becomes a spline, not a line with just an arc like the underground one. What I tell people for an appropriate size is you should be able to put 3 tick marks on here and have it look appropriately. I have some people that when they first start, their arrows are inappropriately long, and then I have other people that they're inappropriately short. You can't get a 3 tick mark on that either. So this is our standard for the home run. Next up we have match text. So match text, some of my commands I think are obsoleted. The AutoCAD actually has commands like these now, and this might be one of them. So in the command line it says select text to match. So if I want to take this LC2-7 and then I picked it, and then it says select text to change. So I picked something else and it made it LC2-7, and I can keep on going on until I want to stop. And that's what that command is about. Revision cloud polygonal. So if I pick that, I can pick on the screen like this any shape that I want, and when I press enter, it draws in the revision cloud. If I pick it and only give it 2 points, it draws in a rectangular cloud with the corners at those points. Block replaced by pick. So this was actually developed for PV Rocket, but it works just fine and is a part of our menu here. So let's say your drafter did a markup and wanted this symbol, and did I say drafter? The designer wanted this symbol, and your drafter put in this symbol instead everywhere. And this is another example of AutoCAD may have a solution for this now, but they didn't 20 years ago. Not that I was aware of at the time. So I picked that, and at the command line it says pick the desired block. So if this is my desired block, then it says pick the block to replace. So that's the block I want to replace. And it did change the layer status on there. But now it knows what it's searching for. So now I can do it by window and get all the blocks, and it'll filter out just the block that I intended to replace. I press enter, and it replaced them with the same scale and rotation that the block that was there was. Freeze nested layers. So that's another example. I am 100% sure that AutoCAD has a freeze nested layers by pick. But I still like ours, and I leave it in there. And I wish this drawing was better from the architect. There's things that the layer conventions don't make any sense. But you can come through and pick things on XREFs, and it'll freeze them as long as it was drawn with the right layers. Now see, I clicked on that one, and even the door went away. So that wasn't correct. But it's just a freeze by pick. That's super handy. Now half and double are kind of silly little commands, but I leave them in there. Let's say your designer intended something to be drawn at quarter scale and the drafter drafted it at half scale, or vice versa. That's what those are about. So if I pick something, it scales them by 50%, leaves it at the same insertion point, same rotation, just scales it down. And that's what that's about. And the double works the same way in reverse. Dynamic text. So I've already kind of mentioned this. The text height and color is set in our options box. Options box 2. So the text color is green, and the height is 3/32 by default. So if you want it to do something else, eighth inch or something, you just type it in there and it'll do it. The thing I like about the dynamic text is no matter what you have going on, it comes in always predictable, changes it to the correct layer, color control, height, everything back to normal for what you're doing. Also, if you're switching back and forth to the sheet, like we did earlier with inserting blocks, the sheet gets a different height, and it knows the difference between model space and paper space and sizes it appropriately for where you are. And that's another great benefit, especially if you're going back and forth. And it's only one pick on the screen and you're off to the races. I think it's a great tool. We also have the multi-line dynamic text where it asks for 2 points, and then same kind of a thing, puts it on the correct layer, correct color, and everything according to your settings. Then we have a link to this video, which I can't press right now because I'm creating the video. So I click on it and there's no URL there. Next we get into customization, and we're done. The customized blocks I'm not actually going to go into. I've decided not to show it to you in this video. It's very powerful for what it does, but it's also been mostly made obsolete by other things. And so I leave it there in case you write me and say you want it to do something and the capability is still in the customize blocks command. So that's why it's still there. But for the purpose of this video, it's kind of hard to understand. And there's that. And so the alias editor works a lot like the AutoCAD alias command. And so if you, but it only works for the commands, not the entire block library. So if you see something that you want to create an alias for, first make sure that it's not a AutoCAD alias, and take it away if it is, and then you can add aliases through that. And then we get into the options. So here we have these things. You could play around with these that give you different appearances. Let me show you the polyline width of 2. It says default is 2, but when you download it, it's actually only 0. I'm going to hit close on that and then use the Conduit command. And do something like that for you. And it draws in the conduit with a thickness. Now it may look funny to you, but we really like this, and this is the standard here at our firm for 2 reasons. First, when it prints, it stands out. It's very readable and very clean the way that it's done. Everybody loves reading our plans. And second, while we're working, it really stands out on the computer screen and allows us to track where our circuits are and what lights, what fixtures are in which, outlets and things like that. It really helps us, and we like it a lot. But we also understand that that's a pretty abnormal thing to do, and so when it first ships, and I've recorded this whole video with it set to 0. This arc length of whips, by the way, 24 is what makes it everything very wavy for us. And during the overview videos, you might have noticed me changing it to 400. Making it something very large will take out a lot of the waviness, if not all of it. This down here, the default line weights, if you print by object line weight, this is where you could control that here. We print by color in our CTB file. The radius overrides, earlier, I think it was, over here, when I showed you that I could hit the outside no matter what, I was cheating. I wasn't hitting the outside. All I was doing was picking the block. And the way that it put it to the outside is, I was cheating. I was completely cheating. So let me go into here and do a radius override on, there's the 2ED downlight. And it says the radius override, I'm going to copy that so that I don't lose it, is 6.31. Make it something very small, like 0.1. I'm not sure you can make it 0. There's reasons for that. And press close, and then go back to the arc command. And go like that, and flip, and everything. And you see that it didn't trim at all. Well, it trimmed the 0.1, but that's how I got it to go to the outside. It will trim. There's a way to get it to trim to whatever distance. It doesn't matter if you picked near the circle or not. And that's the way to do it with radius overrides. And then over here you have layers, layer names and extension suffixes and prefixes and colors, and that's how you do all that. Now if you want to change this, you can, but remember that inside the program these layer names on the left remain sometimes, and I'll show you that in just a second. We're going to create our own command, and so I'm in anticipation of that, I'm going to copy this ePower circuit. So I highlighted it and did a Control-C. Next is what I was talking about before. So on this command duplex, the block that it's going to use is 2DED dupe. And then the layer is ePower wall. Now if you want to change that layer, that's fine, but you may not want to necessarily change this, change it here. This is, let me go back. This is this over here, ePower wall. It's not what you want it to be called. It's ePower wall. So if you want to change it, change the name here, change what it's called, and then over here this stays ePowerWall and it just puts it on the layer that you want it with the same prefixes and suffixes. I hope that makes sense. The snaps are, no matter what snaps you have, they're on, they're off, they're set to intersection, they're set to node, no matter what. These are the snaps that your commands will be looking for. And if you have no snap in there, if they're on, it'll turn them off. If you want the snaps to be left alone, that's fine too. Click in here and type in DEF like that, and that will default to whatever your running snaps are. Whatever snap setting you have will stay in effect and we won't touch it. The scale, so if you don't want it to scale, like it's a 2 foot by 4 foot fixture, then this is blank. If you want it to scale and the block is drawn intended to be in model space, then the answer is 1. If the block is intended to be in paper space, the answer is actually 96, 96.0, and it'll scale it appropriately. The rotation flag is here. There's two options, manual and automatic. Automatic would be an example of that would be the tick marks. So if you put the tick mark in and click auto, it auto rotates to whatever you're attaching it to. And then after this is rotation, also rotation of attributes. So if you click the attribute rotation for a block, and that's all you do, it will have a preference to be down or to the right, never left or up, and still aligned with the block. If you click the attribute definition rotation here and type in a value, which normally would be 0, it will force the attribute to level, horizontal. An example of that would, if you watch this whole video, is all the way back to the numbered note flag that I had. It'll do that. And then the last thing is the alias out there. And like I said, the alias editor that I showed you just a few minutes ago is for commands, not the block library. And this is why, because you can add an alias to the block library out here. Once again, make sure that the alias is available and not standard AutoCAD or taken by another plugin. And that's about it for all of this. Let's create a new command, and that'll be the last thing. I guess I might talk about the way to pay your subscription fee and get a key. But let's create a new command. So the most obvious command that you might want to create, to me, is if you look at my tick marks up here, I have very few. We don't do, here, let me just insert this 4 right there like that. And let's see, what's our scale? 96. Okay, good. So that means that this is 1. So there's a lot of firms out there that would do three tick marks like this, and then the 4th one would be extra long to denote a neutral. So let's create that command very quickly. And the advantage of doing this, the advantage of using my block library, and I'm sure you have a block library, the thing that you don't have is the Conduit command, Fixture Layout, the auto join, and the Fixture Tags. If that's all you want access to, those 4 things, then that's great. This is still a great value for you. You will still see an increase in productivity. But if you use our block library, you gain access to layer control and scaling, automatic, and there's a lot of, and it's all becomes integrated, and there's a lot of advantages to it, and I encourage you to give it a chance. So that's why you would want to create your own command, because then it can follow along with all the conventions of the rest of the ribbon. As far as creating a button for it, I can't do that for you, but CUI editor, if you type in CUI at the command line, there's all kinds of YouTube videos from other people on customized user interface in AutoCAD and being able to give your unique commands their own buttons also. So let me finish this video off with creating a command here. So I want this to be able to be inserted like all the rest. So I'm going to type in block, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Steve. And the insertion point I'm going to say is the mid of 2 points, this point and that point. I'm going to select these objects and press enter or OK. So now the block is in our drawing, and that's an important step. And that step is what makes the customized blocks nearly obsolete. So if I go back into options, and I hope I still copied that one layer. Let me copy it again just to make sure I didn't take it out somewhere. I want a circuit. There. ePowerWall circuit. Now I come in to the fourth, well, actually I'm not sure which box this is, but here at the end is the ability to create your own commands. So I'm going to call this command 3P1N for 3-phase 1 neutral. 3P1N. The block is called Steve. The layer I just copied is ePower circuit. The OSNAP is nearest. The scale is 1. Rotation is manual. There is no attribute. And then I can click add, or I can hit close. I'm just going to click add, and it added it as a command and gave me a new line to be able to create another one. So I hit close on that. And now I type in 3P1N like that, and I get the block. And it will auto rotate and scale just like everything else. And that, to me, is a great advantage. And if you want manual scale instead of auto rotating, because I just realized, since I don't do this, I don't know how you guys who do this, I don't know what your convention is, if it matters which side the neutral's on. So if it does, then you wouldn't use the auto rotate, you would use the manual rotate, but the point stays the same. And so the account, when you first download the ribbon and use it, it automatically downloads a 30-day free trial key for you. Later on, what you'll do is you'll click on this, the buy 30-day key for $20 or the buy 1-year key for $190, and it will open up a web browser for you and take you to my online store where you can enter your credit card and make that purchase, and right there on the screen, and it'll also follow up with an email to you with a 25-digit key that has the expiration date built into it. And you copy that key and then paste it right here and click activate and then close, and you can still use it. You have to have one key for every computer. So if you have your desktop and a laptop, that's 2 keys, twice the cost. Or you can store the key in a text file on this. I've seen this done, and I've done it myself just to check. You store it in a text file on the desktop of both computers, and when you leave your computer and going to go work on your laptop or vice versa, you come in here and press the deactivate button, and then go into the other computer, open that text file, get the key out, copy it here, and activate it. And the activate and deactivate are node locking or unlocking the key to that specific computer on my web server. So that is it. Again, you can write me at developer@pvrocket.com, and any issues that you found, anything that you wish it would do but it doesn't, or you don't think it does, go ahead and write me and I'll help you through it I'm here to help. I'm right here in Sacramento and want to make this useful for you. It's been a great tool for me for 20 years in my firm. Everybody that's ever worked here loves it. They get compliments on their drawings. The plans are so clean, they're so easy to read, and they all report that they've gotten complaints at other companies by using those standards. How do you read this? I don't understand. All this kind of things. This ribbon will help you, I believe. And thank you for your time.